Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Taking charge of your future starts with taking the first steps. And saving up to $30 a month on Cox Internet with the Affordable Connectivity Program makes those steps easy to take. Whether they bring you to click upload on your first short film or join now for an online book club. Applying is easy. See if you qualify at cox.com/ACP. Non-transferable one per household application and eligibility decisions are made by the FCC.
Hello and welcome to a new podcast, The Paddock and the Pavilion with Stephen Wallace. In each show, Stephen will interview someone connected to the world of horse racing or cricket.
Hello everyone. On today's show, I'm joined by the Paddock and the Pavilion's cricketing expert, former England international Roland Butcher, to discuss England's recent Test series against India. Welcome back to the Paddock and the Pavilion, Roland.
Thank you, Stephen, and always a great pleasure.
Well, thank you very much for joining me again. I understand it's very hot and sunny in Barbados.
Yes, I mean, for the last 4 or 5 weeks, it really has been sort of over 30 degrees, so it's pretty warm. The worst thing about it is that not a lot of breeze, so that's making it quite uncomfortable.
Well, it wasn't too good here yesterday. We had rain all day, but it's brightening up, and September is supposed to be a decent month, but not in the 30s like you with no breeze. But let's get the easiest question out of the way first. The Old Trafford Test. What were your thoughts at the time and now about what happened?
Well, it was very, very unfortunate that what transpired at Old Trafford. Obviously, the game not being played, that was very unfortunate because I think the series was shaping up and that test really would have made a huge difference to the series. Up till then, you've had some good cricket. India had 2 fantastic wins, and in between that, England had a fantastic win as well, 2-1 going into the final one. Obviously, India would have been buoyed by their results. England would have wanted to salvage something from the series. So it was really going to be a grand occasion, and it was very, very unfortunate that circumstances conspired to ensure that that test match didn't take place.
But what do you think yourself were the main reasons?
Well, from afar, obviously it is much more difficult than, I guess, people on the ground who would have a much more closer view of things. But I guess the reality is that the test was cancelled because, you believe that, people may have. There was no, as far as I know, there was no conclusive evidence that the Indian players had COVID and was unable to make the starting 11. If there is, maybe somebody can tell me, but I haven't heard anything to the contrary. So really, that really was the strange thing about it, is that because you think something might be the case, that the test is called off.
So do you think the IPL played a big part in it?
Well, it certainly leaves that question open, because even if the IPL didn't play any part in it, then people still would believe, because where the IPL is situated in the schedule, people would believe that the two things are connected. The only people that would really know if that's the case, I guess, would be the Indians. They would be the only ones who can tell you, well, not that they would if that was the case, that the IPL was a big player in this. But it leaves that question open for people to jump to conclusions, and many, many people have.
I mean, the Indian players had been here for a considerable period of time, and I don't know what you would have felt like, but it can't be easy living in a bubble for that length of time.
No, it can't be, but before you set out on the venture, you know that there's 5 test matches. So whether it's uncomfortable for you, you knew that the period of time that you would be expected to be away from home, you'd be expected to be operating under certain circumstances in the bubble. So that was something that was known beforehand. I don't think halfway through that you would say to yourself, well, this is not for me. I'm not saying that the Indians said that, but, if you sign on to an assignment, really it is for the duration. It may be difficult, and you would expect it to be difficult because we are living in some difficult times, and particularly for sport where these bubbles have to be created. It's a very lonely place, and, being away from home as well. But I think also I understand that the Indians had their families with them, so maybe it is not as bad as those teams that have to travel without their families.
And of course, England came back from South Africa with similar sort of concerns as well.
Yes, I mean, obviously, that they had similar concerns, but I am not sure whether England said they couldn't field the team. I guess, they probably took the decision that, this is perhaps too much of a risk, and we're not going to play. But, some of the things that I've been reading, I'm reading that India couldn't field the team. I mean, that is something completely different, if that is the case. By all means, saying the situation is too risky for our players to play in this environment. But it shouldn't have anything to do with the fact that you cannot put out a team when none of the team have tested positive. In fact, they've all tested negative.
And what do you think the outcome of the result will be? It might take 2 or 3 years.
Well, it really leaves the ICC with a dilemma because, England is not going to want a situation where the series finished now. The record says they've lost 2-1. They're not going to be happy with that. India not going to be happy with a decision forfeited the game, thereby victory to England, series 2-2. They're not going to be happy with that. So, neither party are going to be happy. So I think the ICC really are going to have to be the ones who will, ultimately make the decision on whether, 1, it's a forfeiture, 2, a postponement, and 3, whether the game will be replayed.
Yeah, there is a possibility of playing this test match next year, but it won't quite be the same as a 2-1 series position, will it?
No, because, I mean, the sides could be completely different. You could have a whole new England side. You could have a whole new India side. It wouldn't be the same, but it may have just well be the most amenable solution to this difficult problem.
Well, let's turn to the actual cricket. I mean, some have said it's the best series in England since the 2005 Ashes. Straightforward question, but lots of answers, really. What was the difference between the two sides?
Really, the difference between the two sides was, I think, the inability of the England early batsmen to really conquer the Indian bowlers. England had problems right throughout the series, particularly with their opening partnership, which is a vital part of any test team. Your opening partners, they set the game up for the others. And, when you're losing wickets and both openers regularly, that sets the team back. The other thing was, obviously, in critical moments of the game, the Indian bowlers particularly stepped up and put in some phenomenal performances that kept England under pressure. But I think a combination of terrific cricket by India and also some very average early batting by England contributed really to, in actual fact, a very pulsating series.
Yeah, you mentioned those sort of pressure situations where at Lord's, India bowled us out on the last day in 51 overs, and then in the fourth test at the Oval, from being 100 for no wicket, we were bowled out for 210.
Yes, I mean, again, the Oval, really, England had the chance to get very far ahead of that game because, they were well set. I remember when Moeen Ali was batting, things, they were right in the game. They really had India by the throat and just really needed to bat on for another hour and build a bigger partnership. And then a couple of pretty average shots, put India back in the game. And once they saw the door open, they just steamed through. And then obviously, they were going to bat better. They were going to bat better in the second innings. You wouldn't expect that they were going to have two very average batting performances. And they certainly stepped up in the second innings with the bat, which then transferred the pressure back onto England, in the sense that there was so much time left in the game that with the quality of bowlers that India have got and the variety of bowlers, it meant it was going to be an uphill task, one, for England to save the game, and two, to try and win it. So, really that first innings performance with the bat got themselves in that position.
I mean, are the Indian bowlers that being a bit quicker, sort of nearly 90 mile an hour compared to the England sort of mid-80s, does that make a big difference?
Yes, it makes a big difference, particularly when you've got a fragile batting lineup. It may not make a huge difference if they're playing against a very powerful batting lineup, because then it becomes a very good contest. But against a team that is struggling for runs and form, then it's very important. And, a lot of things played out against England this year, a lot of it of their own making. Obviously, the schedule this year really didn't allow people to get a lot of red ball cricket. And a 5-match series against India, the last thing you want to do really is to go into a series on the cook, because you're playing against, one of the best in the world. So that certainly was a mistake. And then, if you put on top of that, your batters of late struggling as well, and the loss of someone like, Stokes, who's a vital part of that team as a batsman, as a bowler, and as an individual, to lose someone like him and Jofra Archer as well, that really would have impacted the team. But I think the batting really was a serious problem.
Yeah, we made quite a few changes with Sibley, Crawley and Lawrence all being dropped. Although you mentioned about the opening partners, in the last two tests, Hamid and Burns put on century opening partnerships in both tests. Were you impressed by Hamid as an opener? Yes,
I thought they did a good job. I think Burns is someone I have a lot of time for. He's very unorthodox, but I think he has guts, he has character. He's usually up for the fight, and I think he's someone that England should persevere with, because it wasn't easy. Trust me, it wasn't easy playing against that India attack. But in those last two test matches, both him and Hamid showed, what was possible. That's the sort of form that they would have needed right at the start of the series. I think had that happened at the start of the series, I think England would have found themselves going into that last game in a much better position.
I mean, two key players for the Indian side were KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma, who both scored over 300 runs. For very good T20 players, they showed very good technique against the new ball.
Well, that's my point. You see, the opening partnership sets the game up, and Rohit and Rahul, well, either they did it together or one of them got a score. But the important thing was that one of them always got a big score, and it put a lot of pressure. Even though India middle order didn't bat particularly well. I mean, Kohli got some average scores for himself. Rahane, also, then you talk about Pant. So, their middle order also didn't step up. But I think those two at the top, they really made it a lot easier for the Indian batting. I mean, had those two failed, I think India would have been in a similar position to England. They would have been struggling as well. But the openers played really well.
And do England need the right conditions? We seem to be a better side when the overheads are in our favour. When we're playing in London, where the wickets are drier, we don't seem to flourish like we do at grounds like Headingley, where we bowled the Indians out for 78.
Obviously, I think you miss some of your cutting edge bowlers. I think Jofra Archer would have had a big impact on this series. So he was a huge loss. So really, a lot of the load really had to be carried by the oldest man in the team, Jimmy Anderson, which, he really should be playing a part at this stage of his career, not playing the major part. So he had to step up and played the major part. So that, that put a lot of pressure on the team. And Wokes came into the piece again at the end. I'm not sure whether Wokes was injured or what the situation was, but I would have felt that with no Stokes, that he certainly was somebody that they needed badly. And also, when you think people like Butler, struggle with the bat in a critical position in the middle order, it meant really that the England bowlers who were short of their best bowlers, were always struggling.
Yeah, Wokes had a heel injury for the first 3 tests, and without him and Ben Stokes, it really throws the whole balance of the side out, I think.
Well, it does. Hey, as I said, and Archer, I'm not sure what people are thinking, but Archer gives them that X factor, and it also inspires the other bowlers as well. So, to lose him, they really found it difficult to break the opening partnership, as well as Anderson Bowle. The India opening partnership really set the games up nicely, and then the quality bowlers that they have finished it off.
From an England batting perspective, Joe Root scored 564 runs. Our nearest batsman to him was Johnny Bairstow with just over 180. How impressed were you with Joe Root?
Joe Root for the last 2 years, really, his form has been phenomenal. How he can keep churning these big scores out time after time really tells you just how good a player he is. And you probably haven't seen the best of him yet. So, England really need to keep him fit, both physically and mentally, going forward, because he's such an important player in the team. He needs some help, though. He needs somebody really to also step up and, take some of that weight off his shoulders. Not that he's not able to carry the load, because he's shown over and over again that when things are tough, he's the man to go to. But they need to find some people who can certainly assist him. I thought David Malan came in and looked very comfortable at this level again. I think, with a bit of luck and time, he probably could take a bit of the load off as well. And if Hamid and Burns can continue, that will give you, some solidity at the top. So right now, the England batting really needs to come together. You can see that it certainly needs some more glue for sure.
Yeah, well, Joe Root's now reached 9,000 Test runs. He scored over 1,200 runs this year in Test matches. England were top of the world in 2011. 10 years later, are we where we are because we concentrated a bit too much on one-day cricket? We world champions in 2019.
Well, you can take your eye off the ball and then get distracted in certain directions. But I think England is a big enough place and really have enough cricketers that they should really be fighting and be able and capable of fighting on all fronts. I don't think that any particular segment of their cricket should suffer, because you've got a huge county setup, you've got players on central contracts, you've got a lot of resources. So England should really be able to fight both on all fronts, Tests, ODI, and T20. And then they really have been fighting pretty much on all of those fronts. If you look really over the last few years in their performances in all 3 competitions, you will find that they're pretty much at the top in all 3.
We're moving forward to the Ashes, starting hopefully in December. Firstly, do you think they'll go ahead?
Again, that really will come down to things in Australia. As you know, Australia is still very much in lockdown, borders closed, things not really good within the country itself. So I think those are things that will have to be taken into consideration. I'm certain that both boards will be trying their best to try and get this series to go ahead, because it is not only an iconic series, it's a very valuable financial series, the Ashes, whether it's played in England or in Australia. So Australia certainly will not want to miss out on an Ashes series against England, and vice versa. England won't want to either. So both boards will work very hard to try and get this on. It will come down in the end really to the government's negotiations with those boards and the people of Australia in relation to this whole COVID-19 pandemic. And that really will be the deciding factor whether the series goes ahead or not.
Well, let's hope it does go ahead. What do you think England's chances are in Australia? We haven't got a very good recent record out there.
I think the chances without the top players to win the series will be very difficult. I mean, it's bad enough and hard enough to try and win the series in Australia when you've got a powerful team, especially now when you've got a weakened side. I mean, if you've got no Stokes, if you've got no Archer, you're going to be under pressure, particularly with the batting that we've seen this summer against India. You know, a lot of those players are going to be the same players. So against a rampant Australian team who will see the opportunity and want to seize that opportunity to win a series against a weakened England side, they will be champing at the bits. I think England have got it all to do. It's going to be much harder for them than for the Australians. If they come out of it, if it happens and they come out of it really without a good beating, I think they would have done well.
You make a good point there. Without the like of Jofra Archer and Ollie Stone, who would obviously have been out there as well, England's bowling attack too samey for Australia?
Well, you see, in terms of the bowlers, it would be a bit too samey because apart from Mark Wood, you know, you really don't have that express pace that you need in Australia. You know, doesn't always work, but it's always nice to have it up your sleeve. You know, if you could add a Jofra Archer to that squad and you had Stokes, the way Robinson is coming on, the way Overton is coming on, and Woakes, you know, you've got a good pace attack that can push the Australians. It would then still come down to, can you put runs on the board? That's going to be really the big question. It's okay having all of these fine bowlers, but if you're going to get bowled out cheaply, you're going to be on the back foot because, you know, Australia have players, some seasoned players who are used to scoring big scores. So, you know, once they get in, they will get big scores. So I think England batting is going to be the key. Even with a very good bowling attack, their batting will be very much the key to the series.
And what's the prognosis of Jofra Archer? Do you think he can come back and be like he was before?
It is very possible. I don't think, obviously, he will be any part of this Ashes series. Obviously, he's got to have a long period of rehab and try to get this thing sorted out once and for all. I suspect that he will come back, and whether he will have the same impact that he's had in an early test and international career, nobody really knows. But I'm sure that he will recover in time. I think the important thing for him now is to ensure that he doesn't rush back too soon. I actually saw him last week here in Barbados, so you know he's still on his rehab, and obviously looking forward to the day when he can play again. But my advice to him really was that you've got to ensure when you come back this time that your body can really handle the rigors and don't come back too soon.
Yeah, well, let's hope he's back for next summer. Now you've been busy as well because you were commentating. Which games did you do?
Well, I commentated on the Australian matches and also the Pakistan matches as well. So, those were the latest internationals that we had in the region. And even though Australia, with a weakened side, was still able to win the series, and obviously Pakistan, unfortunately for them, the series was badly interrupted by rain. They ended up winning the series, 1-0. There was a game cancelled in Barbados, obviously because of a member of the management staff of CWI having a positive COVID test, which looked in the end as if it was a false positive. But they cancelled one of the games as a result of that, which shortened the tour. And then the games in Guyana was Pakistan won the first one there, and then all the others really were interrupted by rain. So it was a pretty unsatisfactory series. But what I would say is, I thought Pakistan had a young team and a good young team, and they look as if that team, could be a threat in the World Cup. But as with Pakistan, when things are going well, something always happens unexpectedly. And then as soon as the series is finished, the coach and the two coaches, actually, the bowling coach, obviously resign their positions. So they're now under new coaches and have to start all over again, which is a shame because, I thought they were a good unit here in the Caribbean. They were going in the right direction. They looked very cohesive outfit. They bowl exceptionally well, and I think Wakar would have had a big say in that. And they looked, for me, a team that you could really have an outside bet on in the World Cup. But we'll have to wait and see now they're under new management.
You were talking about a T20 series against Pakistan there, a one-day international series against Australia, which the Australians won 2-1, and the West Indies comprehensively beat the Australians 4-1 in the T20 series. And you also played 2 test matches against Pakistan with a 1-1 series result.
Yes, I mean, as I said, I thought Pakistan played really well in the Caribbean. The young players, stood up, and as a bowling unit, they also did very well. So I will be watching closely how they perform in this World Cup.
And how have the West Indies been shaping up? You've got this young fast bowler, Jayden Seales, who's only just 20, and he has got 16 wickets in his first 4 test matches.
Yeah, he's a young prospect, good young prospect. Still a bit early to say exactly, how he's going to go because, as you know, this game is a great leveler. But, the start that he's made so far is very encouraging. I think he's someone that has to be looked after and used wisely. You don't want to burn him out at such a young age. He's shown that, he has got some good skills about him. So, if he continues to develop, then really, he will be a find for the West Indies and hopefully somebody that will be in the team for a long time. But he certainly made a good start.
And talking about the T20 World Cup, what are the prospects for the West Indies? This competition starts in late October.
Well, the West Indies have put their eggs all in one basket. They're all, trying to win this particular World Cup. They brought back a lot of the older, more experienced players. Whether that is a good thing or not, we will see. I certainly would like to see them change the approach that I have seen throughout this summer. I mean, they had 15 T20s over this summer, and the all-out attack approach, certainly with the bat, is something that I would like to see tempered, because what you saw was, a team that on their day could be fantastic, but every day is not going to be a good day. So for them to really do well in this series, they're going to have to play a different brand of cricket to what they want to play or what they're accustomed playing. Because, these players, while they're experienced, a lot of them are certainly the back end, and I would say the end of their career, because following this World Cup, I would expect 5 or 6 of these players you wouldn't see again. So they're really banking on the all-experienced guard to pull them through.
So were you surprised to see Chris Gayle keep his place in the actual World Cup squad?
Yes, I was, because I don't think the Chris Gayle in 2021 is not the Chris Gayle that we have known in the past, who, struck fear in the bowlers. He's obviously nearly 42. Reflexes are certainly a lot slower, as you would expect for somebody who's getting older. And, he just hasn't put the runs on the board to suggest that, he will do it consistently. So, yeah, I was a bit surprised that he actually made the final cut.
And I was surprised that Jason Holder is only an injury cover.
Yeah, that's really is a big shock for a lot of people in the Caribbean because, Jason Holder, is one of the better cricketers, all-round cricketers in the Caribbean. He would have added a little bit more of the balance that I'm asking for in the team, in that he would not be blasting away like Lewis and Simmons and Pollard and Russell and the likes. You know, he would bring a calmer head to the batting, and also with the bowling. I mean, really, West Indies could have utilised him as the bowler who bowls his 4 overs up front. You know, he tends to struggle more when he comes back at the back end of the innings. So it would be better to have had him up front, let him bowl his 4 overs. That's how I would have seen his position in the squad. And also, you cannot take out his boundary feeling. I mean, his catching is quite amazing.
Well, the action starts, I think, on the 17th of October, and the West Indies are due to play England on the 23rd of October. So do you think the West Indies can win the competition, England or Australia? Who do you think?
I think they're a very tough group. Very, very tough group. I mean, I have, Australia, I am a bit worried about Australia in this particular tournament. I see them, obviously India are going to be a challenge because, you know, the conditions, it's going to be very hot and they're going to be much more adaptable to those. But, you know, outside chances for me would be, I think Australia's an outside chance. I can see someone like Pakistan get into the semi-finals, but, you know, England's recent history suggests that they're going to be a threat as well. So I think West Indies are in a very tough group.
Well, thank you very much for that. And thank you again for joining me on the Paddock and the Pavilion. It won't be long before we'll be talking about the Ashes. Let's hope we still line up there in December in Brisbane and we can review how England have got on down under.
Stephen, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Paddock and the Pavilion. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and now on Instagram at the Pad and Pav. Don't forget, if you like the show, please do leave us a rating and review.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for calling Discover. This is Anjali.
Hi, it's Jennifer Coolidge. I just got an alert for a strange charge on my card.
No problem. We make sure you're never held responsible for unauthorized purchases on your Discover card. Let's see. Did you purchase something from a t-shirt cannon store yesterday?
Absolutely not. No, I already have like 3.
$0 fraud liability guarantee. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/creditcard. Limitations apply.